and welcome to the Your Financial Pharmacist Real Estate Investing Podcast, a show all about empowering pharmacists to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. I'm Nate Hedrick, and each week, my co-host David Bright and I explore stories from pharmacists all over the country who are achieving their real estate goals while maintaining a meaningful career in pharmacy. Whether you're a first-time investor or a seasoned pro, we're here to provide education and inspiration about the world of real estate. Please note, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks, man. How you doing?
Good. I am starting to unbury from all of the snow that we've gotten here in Cleveland this month, but it's making me very excited for summer this time of year.
Yeah, I know you guys got slammed. It feels like, tis the season for snow.
Yes.
And which for us has meant that my wife and I are on like VRBO and all those websites, like looking for some place to get out of town to once we can uncover from all this just great white north kind of stuff where we both live, right? But, you know, it ties into today's episode really well because kind of as we are dreaming of getting out of here and getting on vacation, we're talking about people that have made vacation rentals their thing.
Yeah, we brought on Stewart and Elizabeth Olney, and Stewart and I connected over LinkedIn, actually, just kind of randomly about real estate investing and both being pharmacists. And their story is just one that I knew immediately right away. We'd have to bring them on the show and talk about it. They are long-term Airbnbers. They've been doing that for years and years. They've rented out by the room, as you'll hear on the show. They now own a motel that they live in and rent out multiple rooms up in northern Michigan, and they're buying another one right now. So talking about vacation, they're living vacation and helping others do the same, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's a really cool model because I know as I've thought about vacation rentals, I've always thought, well, then you're going to buy like one property. It's probably going to be pretty expensive. You're putting a lot of eggs in that basket, and in how they've done it, just the safety and diversity play of having all of the things that we talk about on the long-term rental side, where having multiple units, either across multiple properties or in one property, that multiple units brings some safety there of what if one's vacant, hopefully the others kind of carry it, that kind of thing. Doing that in the short-term rental space, in the vacation rental space, also provides them a lot of security. And paradoxically, it was even a whole lot cheaper for them to do it that way too. So check out their numbers. They get into the numbers about 3/4 of the way through the episode, and it's just mind-boggling how good these numbers are compared to a lot of other short-term rental scenarios.
What I really like about Stewart and Elizabeth's story too is just where they've come from, where they've gone, and how authentic they are. Like, this is just a family living and starting a business. And they're easily the most authentic people we've had on the show. Not that anybody else has come on and been fake, but they are just like really wholesome individuals. And that's what I really liked about just talking to them and having this great interview. So they come from this school of hard knocks a little bit, but it's turned into an awesome, strong business plan that just I'm really impressed by.
Yeah. And do make sure you stay until the very end, all the way right when we get to the end of the final infusion questions, they pop in with this like, oh, by the way, and it's one of the best nuggets of the whole show. And it talks about just the value improvement when you value this as a business instead of as a property. I mean, Nate, you and I have been doing these major rehabs lately that we've been talking about, and we're hoping for this, 10-20% increase in value with these major rehabs. And the percent increase in value they've had just by managing this property better than how it was managed previously, like blows anything we're doing out of the water, right? Like it's amazing what they're able to do. So make sure you stick around until after the final infusion this time for that last nugget.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys enjoy this as much as we did, and we'll take you to the interview. Hey, Stewart, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks. Glad to be on.
Yeah, really excited to have you guys on today. We've got a super unique story. Stewart, you and I connected over LinkedIn a little bit ago, and I knew I had to have you guys on the show. So thank you for joining us.
I think I gave you a bit of an earful, more than probably what you were expecting.
It was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. So I appreciated that. And why don't we just jump right in then, actually? Maybe you can give our audience, a little bit of a look into your pharmacy story. We'll start there.
Well, I originally started at the University of Minnesota going for chemical engineering, and I didn't do well there. I think it was just the fact that it's always dark in Minnesota. Anyway, I ended up at Michigan State doing biochemistry and molecular biology. That's what I got my undergrad in. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get a job because I didn't do any research. And so I had to come up with another solution. And my great grandfather and his father were pharmacists in Bangor, Pennsylvania. And I thought, well, because I always wanted to do something to help people, and I thought that would be a great choice. So I ended up at Wayne State University Pharmacy School, and that's actually part of the impetus for getting into what I got into, and that was the beginning of it all. So, yeah.
Yeah. So then how's that tie into, since you're leading us in that direction, how's that tie into your real estate why and your real estate journey so far?
I feel like a lot of what we've done is kind of a bit of a necessity. Like when I went to pharmacy school, it was 2011. So it was the bottom of the real estate market. That was right when things started to turn around, it seems like. And I was looking at an apartment on campus, and it was going to be like $800 a month, which I bet apartments down there are like $1,600 now. Wouldn't surprise me. But anyway, so I started looking at houses because we realized that a house would be cheaper than an apartment at that time. I got a house in Harper Woods for $600 a month. That was my mortgage. And I decided to start renting the rooms out on Craigslist. I was getting $400 a month for a room. And, it did all right. I had to evict some people and learn some hard knocks. But after a while, I decided that I needed to try something different because Craigslist wasn't really working. I was getting low quality people. And so I tried Airbnb. And Airbnb is great because they kind of do all that advertising and your listing's up there for you. You don't have to hardly put any effort into that. That was kind of right before I got, that was right before Elizabeth and I were going to get married. It was P3 year. And I started doing Airbnb in that November. And then in January we got married, and Elizabeth kind of took the Airbnb off from there. And really,
we were really poor because Stewart was in pharmacy school and he was doing rotations, so he couldn't really work extra hours for CVS. And I didn't have work authorization yet to work in the US because it took a couple months before I had a green card and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we were just kind of going into debt, living off of student debt money. And then somebody in our church gave us the Dave Ramsey course, a gift voucher for that. And that was really kind of the turning point for us.
And it's kind of turned into our motto. So like he says, live like no one else so you can live like nobody else. Yeah. Well, we're kind of still like living like nobody else, and we haven't started living like nobody else yet. But,
Yeah. But in that course, he talked about how people spend about 30% of their income on their house. Mm-hmm. And when we started renting out the rooms, we thought, well, can we get that down to zero? Nice. Can we live for free? And then, so we furnished all 3 bedrooms in the house.
Well, like I said, she's the catalyst, right? So she came up with the idea for us to sleep on a futon in our basement, rent all of our bedrooms out.
We did that for 2 years.
That's incredible. So is that the whole impetus of this? Like, so you guys were like, okay, we need to figure out a way to cut expenses. So that's where the rooms, like the Airbnb started from there. Cause I know it's obviously grown a lot since then, and we're going to get into that, but that was the kind of the jumping off point for you guys.
That was the beginning of it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we like to say we started below the bottom because we started in the basement.
So you're living in the basement, you're making this work, and it sounds like financially that's certainly helping. You have a $600 a month house payment, you're getting a lot more than that in rent. So it sounds like this has lit a fire. So what was then the next step in your investing journey? How'd you get there?
Well, it was kind of a necessity again.
Another one.
Because I got pregnant. And we had to move out of the basement, and we had to get more privacy because we were sharing the kitchen and everything with our roommates. So we thought, okay, we need to get our own house now. So we thought about living in the house, and we kind of we budgeted everything the Dave Ramsey way, and we realized there's no way we can afford to just have the house for ourselves.
Well, we just didn't want to pay for a house.
Sure.
Yeah. And then we thought, okay, what if we buy something else and we keep doing Airbnb? We thought, well, if we buy something else, we can finish the basement as well, add an egress window, and then we have 4 bedrooms on Airbnb. So we started looking at houses, and we just kept running the numbers until we found something that had a mother-in-law suite. And we thought, well, if we live in the mother-in-law suite, we can still rent out the bedrooms in the house. So we bought that house. It gave us all the privacy we needed with our daughter. And we had 3 more bedrooms on Airbnb plus the basement. So that got us.
No, that house doesn't have a basement.
No,
the basement. Oh, yeah. Okay, we rented the basement that we were staying on the food. Yeah. Yeah. So, we put an egress window in, and I trimmed it out and put a wall in and all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
We did everything ourselves back then. We really couldn't afford to pay labor.
Yeah.
So we learned from YouTube how to do everything.
That's incredible. And it sounds like you guys have really learned all of this stuff from the ground up, from managing the tenants to doing the rehab yourself to, I mean, all that is such a pretty intense process that overwhelms and intimidates a lot of people, that you guys are like, yeah, no, this is what we need for our life. So we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. In our third house, I refinished wood floors by myself. It was like a lot of 2 a.m. nights.
Man, I should have you down to my next property. I could use some hardwood floors that need refinishing. I don't want to do it.
So. I don't think I'm doing that again.
Not a contractor, darn. Okay, that's all right. But back up for a second. So, like, I mean, how did you learn some of that stuff? Especially like even like the managing tenants on Airbnb, right? You've got now multiple units, multiple people. Was it just all trial and error, or was there like a course that you read, a book that you read, or was like, we're just going to figure this out? It'll be fine.
Trial and error. And we started following Facebook groups of people doing similar things. Stuart was on Bigger Pockets, and I followed Airbnb host Facebook groups to just see what situations they're coming up with, how they're dealing with service dogs and non-service dogs, and just all these things that come up. And it just kind of, I think that avoided a lot of having to learn through trial and error, learning from other people's mistakes. But we still also learned a lot from our own mistakes too. One of the big things we learned early on was we started renting out by the day.
Pictures are important too.
Yeah, pictures. Yeah. So we kept getting these inquiries from medical students that wanted to come stay for 6 weeks for rotations. And we could never host them because we had all the weekends filled up already. And then we thought, what if we restricted to 28-day minimums and then try to attract those medical students? And as soon as we did that, we started getting these really good guests. And it made the cleaning more manageable because at this point I was cleaning 7 rooms with a baby. And Stuart would work till 5, 6, or sometimes.
Well, I mean, retail pharmacists schedule out 12-hour days. You know,
sure.
I work till 3 or 3 to 9. You know, and I'm working around that, doing mowing lawns and doing gardening on the houses. And
so we would put a lawnmower in the back of our Subaru and drive back and forth and mowing our lawns.
Yeah,
yeah, and we kind of burned out a bit at that point when we got to 7. It was kind of. It was just too much.
Yeah, and the impetus for us getting help was my lawnmower got stolen.
Oh, geez.
It was actually kind of a fun
it was trash day, and I was mowing the lawn, and I put it next to the curb to load back into the car, and I ran inside real quick. I came out and the lawnmower was gone. So he was in the car nursing our oldest daughter, and I leaned in. I said, "Did you load the mower into the car by yourself?" And she goes, "No."
And then he realized, and he yelled, "No!" so loud that the neighbors came out of their houses. And the one neighbor came and she asked, "What's going on?" And Stuart said, "Somebody took my lawn boy." And it was a 28-year-old lawnmower that his dad gave him.
Yeah, the reason it was such a big deal is because the sentimental value. It was my dad gave it to me.
But it always started on the first go, and it had push assist. It was nice.
It was a good lawnmower.
But anyway, so every time we had to make an investment, we kind of ran the numbers. What if we hire it out? What if we buy a new lawnmower? Every time there was a big expense, we kind of we ran the numbers. And
so that was the impetus for us to get help.
Yeah.
And so what kind of help did that look like? Was it a property manager, or was it just hiring just a lawnmower? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So we started getting somebody to just come and mow the lawns, to take some weight off Stuart's shoulders.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got somebody to help me with the cleaning. And we kind of felt like, okay, now we can take on something bigger. Now we can maybe do another one. And we ended up buying that same neighbor, the one that came out to ask about Stuart's yelling. We ended up buying her house, and the day we closed, she says, "Guess what? special lawnmower for you in the garage. And she gifted us a lawnmower.
So when we bought those houses, they were all owner occupied, right? So you put 5% down, conventional loan. We're really house hackers, is what we are.
Yeah.
And kind of like with what we're doing now, it's just house hacking to the extreme, right? So yeah, so that house we lived in, and I actually did mow the lawn with that mower sometimes.
Yeah. So with that strategy, so you just to make sure that we cover that well, you jump 5% down because you commit to living in that property. It's an owner occupant situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then house hack means you've got other people living in it with you that are, in this case, more than paying the mortgage. You're getting paid to live there for free, albeit in the basement on a futon in one house. And then, in the in-law suite, like you could have had the big part of the house, but you chose to live in the in-law suite. Third house, you're doing the same thing. So you keep moving with this. These aren't properties that you're buying intentionally as rentals. You're intentionally moving into them to get the advantageous financing in those cases, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful strategy. And then I think it sounds like this continues to cascade. And then more recently, you've done the whole like monopoly thing, right? Where you trade in some houses and you go for a hotel, or in this case, a motel, right? That's the next part of your story.
Well, again, it's not something that we intentionally moved up north to do. I got this floater, the job up here at Walgreens as a floater, and I was really interested in helping with the vaccinations with the pandemic, right? So, and they were going to pay me to move up north more from St. Clair Shores. Like who?
I think there was a signing, was there a $5,000?
And there was a signing bonus. So I got paid more to move up north. Like, who wouldn't take that deal, right? So we were looking for a house and couldn't find one in the price range that was acceptable to us. So we ended up thinking, well, let's look at commercial real estate. Maybe there's something we can sleep in. And this motel came up on the market, and it kind of worked because we were kind of already doing it with our Airbnbs, so we weren't necessarily afraid of it. Like it was just kind of a natural progression. And so we bought it, and here we are living in a 700 square foot apartment with 3 kids, and no dishwasher.
So, okay, I love this. I think this is just so cool. And again, when you told me this story on LinkedIn, I was like, this is the moment. Like, I got to have this on the show. It's so cool. So talk to me this. Like, how big is this motel you live in? Is this basically like, if you've never seen Schitt's Creek before, that TV show, is it basically that? Like, that's what I'm picturing right now.
Yeah.
No, actually not. So the previous owner actually worked for the Marriott, and he designed their corporate spaces. So when he retired, he bought this old motel, and he took the 12 bedrooms and broke open the walls between every second
12
one.
rooms, yeah.
And he made it into 5 suites.
Wow.
And then 2 additional.
We have a cabin towards the back of the property that he redid right before we took over. And there's a attached kind of extra unit on the manager's building. And then we have 5 kind of suites in a row out. We're sitting in our office right now.
Basically 7 mini lodges.
That's awesome.
He called it lodges.
Yeah.
And he just redid it so beautifully. So, but what really gave us an advantage was he couldn't sell it as a business because the numbers didn't look good. It wasn't worth a lot as a business. The website wasn't that good. It came up on the 6th page after you searched Hotel Indian River. So it had so much potential. It was so beautiful, but it wasn't getting the business it deserved. Yeah.
Wow. And so you guys saw it and thought, look, I can fix up a couple of things. I can do the better management. We've got the experience. It sounds like the perfect fit for you guys. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so did you find that the management was similar to running an Airbnb then? And just, the rooms were effectively the same kind of a setup, just maybe a little more advertising, or was it the same?
It was slightly different because it's a different market up here. Up here, it's kind of tourism focused and not so much work-based travel. Whereas down in Detroit, it's more, our market was kind of a niche. We catered to medical students who are going on rotation with the local hospital. And up here, it's more tourism. We get snowmobilers, we get boaters, we get people going to the local Crossing the Woods shrine up here, and, all sorts of reasons to come up into this area. Sometimes they're here just to visit family. It worked out really well. We had really strong summer. We were 98% booked out in July.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And August was similar. September and October went way better than I expected. And, we're
every single month went way better than we expected.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, it's been good. We don't plan to stop with just one motel. So
when we bought this, it was kind of run like a typical mom and pop's motel, where there's a mom and pop that lives in the manager unit, and they're always around. People stop in, they hand over the keys, they take the payment in the office. That's the way it was run. But we realized that so Stuart was on paternity leave right after we bought this because our third daughter was born. And we realized that when he goes back to work, there's no way I could do this by myself with 3 kids. So we thought, how do we automate this? How do we take some of that load off my shoulders? So we switched the key locks to keypad locks, which also integrated into our website and into Airbnb. So that made it so that I could text people the keypad code before they arrived, and they could just put it in, and they didn't have to stop by the office.
And that's actually something that we did with our Airbnbs from the very beginning. Before I even met her, I had put a keypad lock on the door to the house that I had bought and was renting out to roommates. Eventually, we ended up with Wi-Fi connected keypad locks that integrated with Airbnb and would just give guests codes that would end when their bookings end. And we kind of took that and put it here. We used our Airbnb experience to make things better here.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it had an office phone that it only worked about 16 feet away from the office. So we felt like we could never leave because we were so attached to the building. So we switched to a mobile phone, and then we could go out for dinner, and we could still take reservations while we were eating dinner. And the last step to the automation was to integrate an automated messaging system that also integrated with our website and Airbnb. So that all the things people would come to the office for all day long, we could answer in advance. Like, for example, what is the Wi-Fi password, or how do I turn on the heat, or whatever. So we answered those things ahead of time and just kind of one by one cut down on the reasons people use the office for, till we got to the point where a week would go by and maybe one person would come by the office, and we could have our number on the door and they could just call us. And one of our concerns were, what if they arrive and their phone is dead and they don't know what their code is? So we put a Ring doorbell on the door so they could call us just in case they couldn't.
Yeah. Those are all things that kind of apply to Airbnbs as well on a single family home that we're renting out. We're kind of strange in that we don't rent a house as a whole. We do it by the bedroom, but that's something that would work well with even a single house, and, it's just kind of at a larger scale here. So
I love how you guys have streamlined things and created strategies to make your lives easier while still being able to run what you want. I mean, you're a full-time pharmacist, a full-time mom, and still killing it without having to answer a phone all hours of the day and night. That's really cool.
I do admit we have gotten 2 a.m. phone calls.
Yeah, we still
get phone calls. And we get prank calls from Detroit,
and
too.
We always try to sound really happy and not bothered by the 3 a.m. phone calls. So we sit up and we're like, thank you for calling Totem Lodges. This is Stuart speaking, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Very cool.
Oh, man. It feels like that automation too is one thing that really helps it run more like a business. Because you mentioned that was why it was tough to sell, is because a lot of those things weren't there. So now that you're making it much more like a business, it sounds like it's easier to manage. It sounds, at least by the way you're saying it, paradoxically easier than when you just had a couple people that were from Craigslist and weren't the best tenants and were dealing with eviction. Now you've really got it down to a science. You're texting passwords and you're making this so much easier. How does that go into kind of the next play and what you're thinking about for next steps here?
So we're working on closing on another motel property up here. And again, the impetus isn't actually to buy another motel property, although that's a bonus. It just gets us a 2,000 square foot house that's attached to.
We were just bursting out at the seams here with a family of 5 in a 2-bedroom little apartment. And we thought, okay, no, we really need a house. And then we started looking at houses and we ran the numbers.
Well, the other thing was we couldn't get approved for a conventional loan because of the business.
Yes.
of the loan on this business, they wanted 2 years tax returns from it. So
it kind of screwed us over for being able to get conventional mortgages. And
we thought outside the box.
So we kind of thought, okay, well, then the bank said, okay, well, we can't help you with a conventional mortgage, but maybe we can help you on the business side with a commercial loan. Since you're technically moving your manager unit off-site, and we planned to convert the manager unit into another lodge, the local bank said, okay, well, maybe we can do a commercial loan for you. And then we thought, okay, well, since we're going to have to pay a commercial loan interest rate, why don't we just look at commercial real estate again?
Well, the thinking of that was we couldn't find a house again because the real estate market up north in northern Michigan is still white hot. I know it's kind of slowed down a little bit downstate there, but up here it's still white hot. So
we went around looking at all the local hospitality things that were for sale, and we really didn't like any of it. And then we called somebody we knew that is in hospitality up here, and we asked them, is there any chance you'd let us make an offer? Or you'd consider, how do we say it?
Would you let us make an offer?
Yeah. That was actually the third time that we asked them. The previous times we just said, hey, if you're ever interested in selling, let us know. And we didn't get any good response. But when we asked the third time, we said,
change the way we asked.
Would you consider an offer if you make one? And then I could think he thought, well, how much would they offer? And I think he was just curious. And so he showed us the whole place and we made an offer. And he said, no, that's too low. And we made another offer and he said, that's too low. And the third time he said, fine.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
No, it just boggles my mind that a bank won't lend you money to buy a house to live in, but they'll lend you more money to buy a motel and also to live there. So you've got me just super curious now about the scope and the numbers here. So these types of motels, if you're willing to share, what kind of price point and what do the loans look like? And how does that differ from the other types of properties you've been buying before?
Yeah. So once you get into hotels, motels, it's commercial property, right? So you got to get commercial loans. Our loan term is 20 years, not 30. The interest rates are variable. I think the one loan that we got on this adjusts every 5 years. So crossing my fingers that loan interest rates are 20% 4 years from now, but we'll see. Anyway, so this property that we're in right now was listed at $375, and we sold our property downstate for $400.
So we had $75,000 in cash when we sold our primary residence, and we needed $93,000.
They had us put 25% down on this place.
Because we were buying it as a real estate.
And it wasn't an SBA loan. It was an actual,
If you're applying to buy a business and the business has books, then you can qualify for a 10% down loan through the SBA. But if it doesn't have books, you have to buy
or the owner is unwilling to share the books.
Yeah, then you have to buy it as real estate, and then you have to put 25 to 30 down.
Mm.
Yeah, so we had to put down 25%, which was $93,000.
Yeah.
And so that $5,000 signing bonus came in handy. And then the stimulus money came in, and we were able to scrape together the rest. When we bought this, I think we had less than $1,000 in our account. It was so razor thin.
Yeah.
Were you guys telling me a second ago about Dave Ramsey? Hold on.
Okay,
awesome.
Yeah, we're not very good at sticking with Dave Ramsey. Mostly what we got was live like no one else, so you can live like nobody else.
I was going to say, I think Dave Ramsey has rolled over thinking about all the leverage. I think that's awesome, though. That's really cool.
Yeah. But we're okay now.
Yeah. So off of that $275,000 sales price, then what's the monthly revenue look like from the 7 mini lodges and all that you had on that first property?
Of course, it's variable, right? Because of the seasonality up here. In the summers, the busy season, we were 98% booked out. I think in July, we made $24,000 in revenue on the 7 lodges.
Awesome.
Right now, with January, I think we're sitting at $10,600 for the month. And that's also being a little bit flexible in the types of tenants and bookings we take on. It didn't snow for a while. So in the winter, a lot of the revenue's seasonal. It depends upon the snow and the cold and whether or not there's ice on the lake and on the lakes. It's ice fishermen you're looking for and snowmobilers and other. I'm not sure who else is coming up. Hunters. Yeah.
Mud season is slow for us. When the ground is not frozen yet, there's not a lot going on here.
So, and it didn't freeze early and it didn't snow early. So we were kind of struggling a little bit with the revenue. And so what we did is when I moved up here, I moved up ahead of the family, and she looked for housing for me, and she couldn't find a place for much less than $1,600 short term.
Wow.
So what we did is people inevitably, starting October, November, they start calling and asking, hey, what's your price for a month? So she started telling people $1,700. We're renting a motel room out. Well, it's a suite. It's got a kitchenette, living area, fireplace, nice bathroom, bedroom for $1,700. And we have 4 of them rented out like that right now. Well, one of them's for $1,000.
Which kind of pushed more daily reservations to the 3 that are still open for days. So I think it makes us maximize our profit on those while we're making good income on the other 4.
And we told everybody that by May, then we can't do any more long term, because that's when business starts to pick up again.
That's awesome. I love how you guys are adapting to like things on the fly, right? Here's what's coming in. Here's what we can do with this. This is what's needed right now. And, most people would love a 4-unit renting at, $1,700 a month per room. And that's incredible when you compare that to somebody just doing a simple multifamily deal or something like that. So that's really cool. I appreciate you guys sharing that with us. So one more thing I want to dive into, because I think it's a really good, like, bring everything back together, right? Is that you've done the single rent by the room, like house hack, cleaning the rooms by yourself, 7 houses at a time management strategy, all the way down to now buying your second motel, managing multiple like units at the same time. What do you feel like has kind of brought everything together? Do you think that, is it nicer now that you've got all these units that you can manage all at once, or do you wish there was more like simplicity built into it, or what's kind of the now that you've been through this journey at this point, like what's the grand feel about all that?
I think it was hardest when we were doing it all ourselves, to be honest with you. That's what was hard. But once we've brought in people, labor to help, it was really helpful. I mean, saying labor doesn't do the people justice, right? So it was a good friend that Elizabeth brought on to help us with rentals downstate, and all the people up here that we work with are great, and we could not do what we do without them.
I think that what we learned was that there's certain skills that we have is valuable, and let's leverage those skills while we source out the skills that we can easily find somebody else to do. And I think we're kind of getting to the point now where we can say, okay, we really hate these things. Let's outsource that and focus more on the things that we love to do and leverage that. And I think that's what we're going to do moving forward, is probably get somebody to help with all the paperwork and all the mail and all the laundry, which I hate. and then we can focus on growing the business more.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, guys, I love this story. It's absolutely incredible. But I want to jump to our final infusion questions. These are 3 questions we ask every guest on the show. So we'll do it one at a time here. We'll let Elizabeth answer and then have Stewart jump in as well. So you can have your own separate answers. But the first question in our final infusion here is, what's one tangible strategy? And I know you've given us a lot, but one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing works hand in hand with your careers?
So for me, I couldn't do this without Elizabeth. So I'm a retail pharmacist, right? So like if a toilet is overflowing and I'm working, she's got to be the one to handle that. Because imagine if you owned all these rentals yourself, and I imagine you've had other pharmacists on the podcast who have other strategies on how they handle that. But I can't do that. I can't handle that when I'm working. Mm-hmm. So Elizabeth is my secret weapon.
I love it.
I'm a master toilet plunger at this point. Yeah, I think it was just his income has made it possible for me to not have to have a career.
Well, your career is us.
Yeah, I mean, the business has become my career.
Yeah.
I was getting my prerequisites to become PA. And when this all kind of kicked off, we made the decision that I was going to focus on this instead. And the income that he generated really made that possible, that I could focus on this.
Second question is, what's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be? Start with Elizabeth, and then I'll pass to Stewart.
Well, it was a Dave Ramsey course, which just came at the right time. And then I reached out for that by Kiyosaki. I think just Dave Ramsey was good for getting our budgeting right and lowering our expenses and kind of thinking about where our money was, not where it went, but focusing our money in the direction we wanted it to go. But the next step was to understand cash flow and how to invest in the return on the investment. That's where Richard Kiyosaki came in, very helpful, useful.
For me, it was Bigger Pockets. I was on Bigger Pockets. I think right when we were in the first house, I started getting plugged into it because I realized, these Airbnb rentals are working out really well. So I started looking into it more, and I learned a lot from Bigger Pockets in the beginning. I'm not on there so much anymore because I feel like just the act of doing, you learn so much more than going and reading the blogs and getting stuck in analysis paralysis and thinking about stuff. And, but Bigger Pockets really helped me have an idea. And, a lot of it was technical. It's like, what can you finance? How do you get the financing? Who do you talk to? And that really helped me know how to talk to the right people and do the right paperwork and have all my ducks in a row to get the financing done on the property. So
at the beginning, YouTube was very helpful. We were so active in our investing, doing everything ourselves, and we had to learn from YouTube and Pinterest. We got a lot of ideas. And then the groups that we follow on Facebook, other hotel, motel owners, how they deal with situations, other Airbnb hosts. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. And then our third question, what's one piece of advice you'd give to a pharmacist that's contemplating a start in real estate investing?
Have a support system. Because when it hits the fan, when you're at work, you have to have a way to at least hold things off until you can get off.
That's a great tip.
I mean, I guess that's focused on retail pharmacists, right? I guess if you're more clinically focused and can take 5 minutes and step aside and shoot some text messages off or make some quick phone calls, that works. But not in retail, not in a high volume pharmacy. It doesn't work like that. So
I think for anybody getting into investing or just getting out of school, I think that first 5 years is so important. It just kind of ripples. Everything you do, every financial decision you make those first 5 years can have such a big impact on your future finances. And if you're willing to take to heart what Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else, so you can live like no one else that early and just not care what people think, and you're okay sleeping on a futon in the basement and going to that extreme that early on, it'll have huge payoff at the end.
You guys are living proof of that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so true. Just delaying some of that and not buying the shiny new car and all those things right away really does make an impact, particularly if you do what you guys have done and take that momentum and turn that into investing. And yeah, the ripple effect that will have is that's super cool. So where can people find out more about you and these motels if they're looking for somewhere to stay in northern Michigan?
totemlodgesir.com. We're online. You can book online if you're so inclined to. We would be happy to host. And, you get to meet our daughters. They like to come out and greet people. And
yeah. Awesome. I'm sensing a YFP retreat, David, coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're putting them to work really young.
Yeah.
Teaching them the business. Our 5-year-old picked up 17 wheelbarrows of leaves this fall, and she earned $17.
That's awesome.
And she got to $95. And we said, don't you want to do just 5 more wheelbarrows so you can get to $100? And she said, no, my tooth is loose, and I know you're going to give me $5. I'm good.
Kids are awesome. Smarter than we are. That's great.
She's been spraying weed with vinegar and stuff, and earning a couple bucks here and there. And we're trying to get her hooked in.
And I'm on LinkedIn, of course. That's how we connected. So if you just look up Stewart Olney on LinkedIn, I think my address is Indian River. I should better go check that. But, the Stewart Olney in Indian River, who's the pharmacist. Awesome. I don't think there's any other Stewart Olney out there who's a pharmacist. So
Well, guys, I really appreciate you joining us on the show. This is just such an awesome experience to hear about what you guys have been up to and your journey so far. And I hope to have you back at some point in the future to hear more about the next motel and where do you go from there. So really appreciate your time.
Yeah, sounds good.
We kind of missed something about the conventional mortgage versus commercial lending, which we didn't know until we got into it, that we find really, really awesome, is when you're buying real estate, you can't add that much value to it. I mean, you can put sweat in and add value that way, but compared to the neighborhood, it's not going to go up that much. You can only add so much value. But with a business, it's a whole different ballgame. So when we bought this, we paid $375,000, but now it's valued as a business. And so they're looking at the income you generate, they multiply it with...
Well, conservatively, I take a 15% cap rate, but the motel we're purchasing is, I think we're paying 11% cap on it. So
now that we've run it for 8 months, we have almost doubled its value.
Wow.
So within 8 months, it basically grew from a motel that was worth $375 to one that's worth almost $750,000
conservatively.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can grow your business. You can double it in a year. I mean, you can try to do whatever, but it can just grow exponentially, which kind of just blew our mind and kind of made us decide we're sticking with this now. This is way cooler.
Absolutely. And you're right on that when it's valued as a business and there's a cap rate formula in there and you can increase that revenue. And it sounds like you guys have just killed it, not only increasing revenue, but also making the expenses very manageable through the automation that you've done by doing both of those things. Yeah. You're killing it with increasing the value. And so if you can find more value add business opportunities like that, the sky's the limit compared to where you guys started with buy the bedroom on Craigslist. So that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, again, guys, thank you so much. This has been great. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. It was great talking to you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.